Hey, how you doing? It's a warm one for us today. It's supposed to be even hotter tomorrow. So I thought we should talk about what happens when your cold zone garden gets too hot. My name is Sharon. I garden on a large yard in a small town in east central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. So we got to about 29 C today, which is about 85 Fahrenheit, and we didn't have a cloud in the sky all day long. It was just as clear could be. The sun was beating down, and it felt hotter than the 29. Tomorrow's supposed to be hotter, 33, also clear without any clouds, and 33 would be into the 90s Fahrenheit, I guess. And that's getting pretty warm. I do notice it on some of the plants. And so today I did a bunch of prep work preparing for that heat that's coming. It's only going to be a day, so I'm not going to call it a heat wave. But today and tomorrow, today was a pretty hot day, and tomorrow hotter. So I thought I could do a few things since I have shade cloth, etc. And I just went around the yard and just kind of made sure everything was set to take the heat. The plants still aren't really deeply rooted. A lot of them are not for me. And so they're still, they have roots sort of a little bit closer to the soil surface. They're not really shaded yet by lots of foliage. And so they are getting some pretty warm soil to deal with. So I just thought I'd show you what I have been doing, the measures I've taken, and maybe impart some experience along the way as to how you can help your plants overcome any kind of hot conditions that you might be experiencing now or soon to experience. I mean, it's only the beginning of July, so we're bound to get hot, dry, windy weather sometime in the next couple months, and sometimes that can last for a while. It's good to have your plants prepared. Any of the perennials, of course, I'm really not concerned about, with the exception of anything that you have just transplanted. So if you've only planted them within the last, say, week or two and they are not yet well rooted, you should go and give them a nice, big drink, water deep. It's not enough just to wet the leaves and you think you're cooling the plant down like you would cool yourself down. It's not quite the same. They need deep watering, and that's more beneficial to them in heat or a heat wave than it is frequent shallow waterings. Giving them a really good soak is always going to be better for them. So anything small and potted that perhaps you have not yet had a chance to plant into the garden or yard, and don't go rushing. If you're going to get some really hot days, don't go rushing at this point to go plant them. Just put them in the shade, give them all a good watering, and let them rest in the shade until it's a little bit cooler. Here in the vegetable garden, I started off today by giving everything a watering that needed it. The potatoes, I watered. Garlic I didn't, but the onion I did. The lettuce I just finished watering. The tomatoes I gave a deep soak. And the cabbages and broccoli. So, cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower, they like to grow cool, and they're not all that fond of baking in the heat. So I have some shade cloths. First of all, I gave this a really good soak today. They are happy with that. And second of all, I have shade cloth that I put over. So this shade cloth, I got it from Lee Valley Tools, but I'm sure that they are available in a lot of places. I think it's 12 feet long. It should be at least 12 feet because it fits over one of my raised beds, which are 12 feet, and they're probably about 6 or 8 feet wide. They're 30%, they provide 30% shade. And, you know, a couple years ago, I grew my cabbage crop under that shade cloth for weeks because it was hot and dry, and some things, leafy vegetables, for example. Leafy vegetables, really, lettuce, spinach will bolt in no time on a hot day, it seems, or during a hot period. So here as well, I am using the shade cloth for my lettuce, and you know that even with the 30% shade, they are still getting plenty of sunshine. They're getting what they need to continue to grow, and not. I find that sometimes in the heat, that lettuce will go bitter, and so I find that it's quite beneficial to grow it under a shade cloth when it is hot and no clouds in the sky. Cloudy days are a little bit different. I also put shade cloth on the peppers, and mostly because they were showing some signs of wilting, and they're still showing a little bit of signs of leaves curling, which is a normal response to heat. They are just not able to take up as much water as they need. They're transpiring too much in the heat, trying to keep the leaves and plant cool. So here we have just a little bit of leaf curl. It's really not too bad. I'm not, you know, overly concerned. And this is just a normal response for the plant. Doesn't mean it's going to die or anything like that, but when you see it happening, I take that as a sign that something should be done to help the plant, especially if you're going to go, you know, day after day with them wilting like that, and or, you know, with the leaves curling and never really given a chance or having a chance to recover from that heat stress. So that's the first thing that you can do to help your plants, is to provide some shade. I have also shaded these squash plants, and the only reason I did that, they weren't showing any signs of stress, but the only reason I did that is because I know they can be kind of a little bit divas, you know, they suddenly will wilt and look almost dead. From one minute to the next, you know, it's a very quick process for them. So I just went ahead and gave them some shade today, and I will as well tomorrow during that 33-degree day. And I have 4 of these shade cloths. They have been a very good investment for me. I started off with 2, then I bought 2 more, and they're going to last forever. They're, you know, a fairly strong plastic sort of netting, and yeah, they really will not have any trouble lasting me forever. They're quite thick and just really sturdy. So if you buy 1 or 2, whichever, you know that you're going to have them for a long, long time. And I decided today to also provide a little bit of shade to the cantaloupe and the honeydew. You know, they already have fruit set. I'm sure their roots can't be all that huge yet. And of course, you know, they're getting daily water or water whenever they need it. But I thought, well, I would just use some of this row cover. It's doubled up, and I've just use some different kinds of clips just to make sure it kind of stays on there. I also have these kinds of things, these kinds of clips. They aren't the best. They're actually good with the green shade cloth because these will just kind of move and come off with the row cover. And you know, probably one of the best things is clothes pegs. They work excellent with this row cover. So that just provides a little bit of protection from the sun while still giving it plenty of light that it needs to grow. So aside from shading your plants, that's one of the first things you can do, especially if you see signs of heat stress, is get some shade on them. However you have to do it. Shade cloth, you can use landscape fabric, you can even use sheets, and you can use whatever kind of stakes you have. I have some areas where there's just a stick, you know, holding it up. I have a lot of rebar stakes. I use them extensively through the garden. That's the other thing, that I think if you had some, you would never regret getting them, because I use them just constantly for all kinds of things. Those are my stakes. Those are my go-to. Anyways, the next thing you want to make sure that you do is have everything really well watered. And I've talked about this before, how I like to create a well for all my plants, because mostly I hand water. And you know, sometimes when you water, that water just kind of drains away and not around the plant. So you want to direct it. You want it directed around the plant roots, and you want it to stay there without it draining away somewhere else and not helping that plant at all. So I bank up the soil all the way around on each plant, and that helps the water stay there. There's a method of gardening called waffle gardening that I just read about this year, although in a way I've been practicing it probably all of my gardening life. And that is by creating those wells around plants to hold water. This was originally a way that somewhere in Mexico, it was where there's heavy clay and not much water, they would create a waffle design in their garden and then be able to water just within the depression, so that all the water stayed around the roots of the plant and didn't, you know, drain away. And so, as I said, I haven't been, you know, banking up walls basically like a waffle garden would, but it's an interesting concept. It's a great way to conserve water and direct it to the roots of the plant. But anyways, I guess I've been doing that before I even knew that it had a name. I've been creating those little depressions to hold the water, I think ever since I started gardening, pretty much. So that is a really good way to make sure that your plants are getting a deep watering at the roots where they need it, so that they are able to draw up the water into their leaves and be able to beat the heat. The other thing you can do is to help your plants beat the heat is to mulch the soil. And you can do that in containers as well. Provide a mulch over top so the sun isn't baking them. If you have containers that are full of plants on top and you're not seeing any dirt, mulch isn't really that beneficial. Maybe a little bit for evaporation. However, it's not, you know, the plants are shading the soil surface. So in that way, you don't have to worry about mulching the container plants if it's full of foliage and flowers all the way around. I don't. It is, however, beneficial if you have one tomato plant coming up out of a pot and lots of surface of soil. That in that way, mulch would be beneficial. A light mulch, just something to shade the soil, would really be what you're hoping to achieve there. In the garden, of course, mulch is very beneficial. It retains the moisture and it shades the soil. And so many of you know that I've mentioned that I use straw extensively through the yard. I mulch the perennial beds for the most part, all of them with straw. And I also use it in the vegetable garden, as you've probably seen. I don't mulch everything. I think that some plants do benefit from having a warmer soil, like the squash, for example. I may mulch it at a later time, but at the moment, I'm still not mulching it. Same with the melons or the cantaloupe and the honeydew. I'm not mulching that yet, but I may at some point. You know, you kind of got to go with what the year brings you as well. So wilting and leaf curling, those are like immediate signs of heat stress. In a little bit longer term, you could notice brown or yellow leaves that are, you know, a sign of it being under heat stress too much. Some of the leaves could become a little bit more discolored or spotted, and the plant could have reduced growth or reduced fruit set. Tomatoes and peppers, and I think cucumbers, they all have certain temperatures where they would actually stop fruiting just to survive. They're surviving the heat, and so they do have temperatures where they would stop producing. And so if you do have any of those signs, the first thing you want to think about is making sure everything is well watered and watered deeply. And if you're not sure how long deeply means for that particular plant, you have to, you know, stick a stick in the soil or get a moisture meter or dig a little hole in the soil deep down. I'd say 6 inches down, just to make sure that it's moist down there. Don't plant during heat waves. Your plant is better off in the pot until it gets a little bit cooler. And if you have planted and a heat wave comes along, you can shade that plant with anything. You could even put, you know, an umbrella over it or something like that, a sheet over a stake, something to just take the sun away from it for a little while, because you would notice on a cloudy day that heat wouldn't matter to the plant as much as it does on a sunny day. And also consider mulching. That does help the plant. It keeps the soil moisture, it retains the moisture, as well as keeps the soil surface cooler. And for any of those potted plants that are waiting to be planted, just get them into the shade. Nothing's going to happen to them if they spend a few days in the shade. You won't have to, you know, re-harden them off to the sun or anything like that. They are going to be just fine in the shade. They're going to be better than baking in the sun. So thanks very much for watching the video today. I hope you found it helpful in some way. If you did, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Thanks again. See you.